Welcome to Psychology Today. I'm Ann Morrow and I'm the host. This is a show about bicycling and especially about bicycle safety. And I want to thank you for joining us. Our show is a little bit different. We have a panel of guests. We have 3 guests joining us to talk about Randonneuring. And I hope that you'll hang in there a little bit and just learn a little bit about the sport before you think, oh, this is going to be too hard for me. I think you'll get a lot out of it and learn a lot in the process. And there might be some tips that you can incorporate into your own riding. I want to thank our crew of volunteers for helping us tonight, and thank you to Northwest Bicycle Safety Council for sponsoring our show. Let's meet our guests. We've got Lynne Fitzsimmons here in the center, and she also happens to serve on the Northwest Bicycle Safety Council Auxiliary Board, and she has not been on our show before. And right to my right here is Susan Otcenas, who's been on the show before doing fashion shows with her gear from Team Estrogen, and that was a lot of fun. And we also have someone else that hasn't been on the show, Tom Durkin, is a randonneur, and representing the males of the sport, which I understand there's mostly males, and we only have one of you. You're
That's
in the minority.
Right.
So
That's
we'll learn more about that. I guess because I'm a woman, I kind of lean toward getting women to join us. So I want to welcome you all and thank you for joining us and taking some time to talk to us about this sport. I want to have all of you introduce yourselves and tell a little bit about how you came into cycling and just, a little bit of history. Lynne, I'm going to start with you, just I guess because I know you from the Northwest Bicycle Safety Council. Go ahead.
Okay, let's see. How did I get into cycling? I've always ridden a bicycle. In college, I went to University of Houston, and I didn't have a car, so I rode my bike all over Houston. My first organized ride was the Moonlight Bicycle Ramble. So imagine, if you will, the night going from daylight savings to not daylight savings, so you have that extra hour. And we started at 10 o'clock at night in Herman Park and rode around to all the parks in Houston. No helmets, no lights. I just remember sitting there in a donut shop watching all the bicycles go by. And I moved out here and I said, I'm going to ride my bike to work. I bought a helmet after the first one because Walker Road was kind of narrow. 2 lanes, ditches, that was it. I've just been riding ever since. I started riding with friends after work and then got into longer rides. I did Cycle Oregon way back when, and then dropped off for about 10 years when my kids were at that age where you spend your entire life taking them places, and then got back into it in 2003 and started randonneuring in 2007.
Okay, we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute here. Susan, how about you?
Well, like a lot of people, I think I started riding as a kid. You get your first bike, you ride around the neighborhood. I rode my bike to school in high school. After college, I lived overseas for a few years and was car-free, so spent quite a lot of time on my bicycle, did a lot of bike touring, and I think that's where my love of long-distance cycling really began. You see an amazing amount of scenery from the seat of a bicycle. You're fast enough to actually pass through the scenery and get someplace, but slow enough to see, hear, and appreciate the landscape that you're moving through. Lynne is one of the first people that I heard about randonneuring from, actually, and started doing that a couple of years ago. And it really, to me, it spoke to everything that I love about bicycling, the ability to travel, experience new places, places that I hadn't been before, and just an opportunity to challenge myself as a cyclist.
And Tom?
Well, I've been riding my whole life, and I had a paper route when I was a kid, and then I got distracted by cars and girls and life, but I bought a bike and rode it when I was in college, and as my son grew older, he got interested in bicycle racing, and so we both went to BMX tracks, and I kind of got hooked on racing BMX with my son, and did that for several years, and then started riding with the Portland Wheelman Touring Club and got interested in longer distances, and was introduced to randonneuring, and then I got into bike racing, road racing and track, and after I retired from doing that, I started riding longer distances and got really interested in randonneuring through other similarly thinking friends, and just gradually grew into it over a period of maybe 10 years or more, the two actually going on these longer rides. So it's kind of been a build-up for quite a while.
who wants to tell us a little bit about the history, or what is randonneuring, and what's the definition? Is anybody?
Bicycling with bookkeeping.
That's actually not too far off. It's Randonneuring is a form of very long distance cycling. It's non-competitive. Self-sufficiency is important. We ride established routes, and we prove passage along the way by stopping at certain checkpoints and getting proof of passage, typically a receipt from a grocery store or deli or something like that that proves that you've passed along.
You can't go too fast or too slow. You have to hit those controls in a time window.
Right. It's not a race. It's very specifically not a race. So there are time limits, both too fast and too slow. In other words, you can't pass through too quickly, but you also need to keep moving along at a certain pace. And especially for most of our shorter rides, shorter being 100, 200 kilometers, that'd be 62 to 125 miles, the paces that you need to maintain are very approachable for a cyclist that's in, the average cyclist would find that the pace is to be very approachable. It isn't really until you get into the much longer distances, 300, 400, 600 kilometers, that the challenge of riding that far and keeping that steady pace becomes a little bit daunting.
Okay. Anybody have anything to add to that? That sounds like a good description. We'll talk more about it and kind of fill that description in with your experiences. Lynne, why don't you tell us, how did you make that transition into randonneuring?
Well, I started back riding in 2003, and I think I rode my first century that year. Next year I rode a few more centuries, and all of a sudden all I was doing was signing up for centuries and riding STP, and then Susan said, hey, the Wine Country Populaire is this weekend. And you know, it was November, 62 miles. It was actually 70 miles, about right. And we didn't quite finish that one. There was a small ice episode. But I said, this could be fun. And so the next year I did the Spring Populaire and then the Berkey 200, and things just kind of got a little out of hand from there. Yeah.
Kind of consuming, like you're just always moving to the next event kind of thing?
Well, I did 200s and a couple 300s for a few years, and then last year I finally got my Super Randonneur, which is a full series, 200, 300, 400, 600.
Okay. And that's kilometers we're
kilometers,
talking about.
yeah. Everybody here at this table is a Super Randonneur, just saying.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
And you all belong to the Oregon Randonneurs? Okay.
Right.
Susan, how about you? I know you, well, let's see, and now you're into triathlons, but tell us how you got into randonneuring.
Well, I think Lynne and another friend, Cecil, were doing randonneuring for a season or two, and they knew that I really enjoyed the longer rides, and so I started coming out to the spring series, actually just a couple of years ago. And what I discovered was that I like to say I have a small engine but a really big tank. So I'm not especially fast, but I discovered that I had the ability to stay on my bike for a really long time. My pace doesn't slow down a whole lot, so you know, at mile 5 or 10, or 15, I'm moving along at about the same pace I was in hour 1, you know, as I am in hour 15. So I discovered that I just had a skill for being able to be steady. And of course, living in Oregon, we're so lucky to have such amazing scenery to ride through. So the routes that the club puts on are just truly beautiful. We go out to the Coast Range. We ride over the Cascades. I mean, there's just so many beautiful places to ride that it actually becomes a little bit addicting to visit new places and on the seat of your bicycle. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Tom, how about you? You told us a little bit, but...
Well, I started riding longer distances as part of my becoming an adult when I was 40, I suppose, and just kept doing longer rides, and I got tired of racing for racing's sake, and so I just kept doing longer rides. And every once in a while, I'd show up at a wheelman ride that Portland Wheelman had. There was a brevet, and so I'd ride the brevet, and you know, I had a good time and met a lot of different folks that I rode with regularly, but they were doing these longer rides, and over a course of several years, I started to become addicted to this, and so. started actually training to go longer distances. And some of my other friends are very experienced randonneurs, and they've been to France and other long distance rides. And so we just started riding together and training, and came up with some plans and some goals, and we acted on those goals. And pretty soon we're riding 200, 300, 600 kilometers, and the long ride of 1,000 kilometers was our ultimate goal a couple years ago. And that was just a great experience. And so I just enjoyed it so much, I kept training.
So you're addicted.
Right.
And it sounds like you all are. But
What else do you do on a weekend? Let's go ride 200 kilometers.
But it's kind of fun to challenge yourself just to see what you're personally capable of. You know, ordinary people can do pretty extraordinary things, and it's fun to be able to see, well, I can go 200 miles. Could I possibly go farther? Could I ride 300 miles? Could I ride 600 miles? Could I ride 700 miles? You know, what am I capable of as an athlete? And I think most people would discover that they're capable of more than they give themselves credit for. I think all of us have done rides that, if you had told us just a couple years before those rides that we were going to do something like that, we might have laughed at you. But you know, we discovered that we did have the ability to do those things just by working up to them and challenging ourselves.
you didn't jump into it. You eased into
Yeah,
it.
I think all of us
Yeah.
eased into it.
So tell us about your bicycles. Is there a special bicycle for Randonneuring, or what bicycle do you start out with?
Well, the most important thing for me is comfort. I have to be comfortable in order to ride my bicycle for 8, 9, 10 hours in a row, and so for me that's the critical issue. And so I have a bike that has pretty big tires on it and a comfortable saddle, and my position's really well set up so that I don't have aches and pains or any of those types of things, and so I can continue on and on and on and on like the ever-ready bunny, and so that's the most important thing for me.
And Lynn?
The same for me. I started out randonneuring on an old Sekai 2400, you know, your basic Japanese bike from the 80s.
Uh-huh.
It was a great bike. Came to an untimely end. And then I got a Rivendell, just because it was, you know, it wasn't a race bike. I didn't want a race bike. When you're randonneuring, you actually have to carry things.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you want a bike that has places to carry things.
So, but that first ride, maybe a metric century, 62 miles, you could use any bike
You can.
that you
Absolutely.
can make that distance.
There are some
That's
people
right.
that actually have done them on unicycles. Remember the
Yeah.
unicycle guys?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's not surprising. Okay.
One guy
And-
did it on an extra cycle.
Well, people do STP on
Oh, yeah.
unicycles and goofy things. So,
Yeah.
So what advice would you give somebody that might be new to the sport or interested in the sport as far as the bicycle? What would you encourage them to make sure they have starting out?
Well, Tom touched on this, but the best bike for you is one that you're comfortable on. If you're not comfortable on it, you're not going to be happy doing the sport. But I mean, that's true of any sport. Randonneurs are actually really concerned about safety. This is a show about safety. So, you know, we require our riders in low light conditions to have headlights, to have visible taillights that don't flash, to wear reflective clothing. So having a bike that is set up for a headlight, that you can fix a taillight to properly, is really important. We do ride in sometimes not so sunny Oregon. So a bike that has fenders or is capable of having fenders will make you a lot more comfortable, will make the ride a much more pleasant experience, but actually is a little bit safer too. Again, if you're comfortable, you're going to be paying attention to the road and not worrying about getting splattered on. It's also nicer to your ride companions to have
Mud
fenders.
flaps.
Yes, mud flaps are very
Mud flaps
important.
are important because, you know, someone behind you, you know, you get the spray.
Yeah, that rooster tail thing.
Yeah, so really, road racing bikes for that reason. You can certainly do a brevet on a road bike. I've done them on a road bike. But in most conditions, a bike that's less fancy, you know, a bike that has fenders, that you can carry a handlebar bag or a rack, so that you can carry some food and supplies, that'll keep you safe and keep you fed,
Yeah,
is pretty important.
that makes sense. What about other gear that you you like to carry, some of the other essential gear. For instance, in looking at pictures, I see a lot of front bags, like you're saying, to access what, food while you're
Very
riding?
definitely food. It's full of food.
We are calorie-consuming machines.
Yes. Will there be food? Yes. Eating's real important. But yeah, there's food in there, things that you want quick access to, like maybe gloves if your hands get cold. When you peel off your arm warmers, you can stuff them in there. The ibuprofen, you know, that stuff. It's all right there.
The route sheet, so you know
Yeah.
where you're going.
Yeah.
you
Okay,
know.
so some of those might have a clear top on to
Yeah.
put your
Right.
map in. So
Not everybody has those. It's a
Uh-huh.
stylistic thing, but a lot of people do have the nice, you know, canvas front luggage with the map cases. Yeah.
those are handy. And a lot of you, I think a camera must be essential because,
Sure.
like, both of you have blogs and both of you have pictures posted. So,
It's in my jersey pocket.
okay.
I shoot while moving.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
Okay. Susan, how about you? Same? Or
I keep my camera usually in a little bento box on my
Oh,
top
okay.
tube.
Uh-huh.
I actually don't do the large front handlebar bag. I don't like the balance on my bike. I prefer a bag behind my seat. But that's really just personal
Yeah.
preference. And I use a GPS instead of a paper map sheet. So I find that to be more convenient and easier to manage.
So other than the obvious of you need a bike, you need a helmet, what else do you personally have to have on the ride? And that can be something that you just, like you're talking about personal preferences or just some little superstitious, I got to have such and so along. I know some people have a little stuffed animal or
You're looking
something
at me
like
when you say that.
So tell me about that.
Well, that's just Little Pink Bear. It was started out as a joke many years ago when I got my Go Fast bike, which was pink, and I like to wear pink, and I was wearing pink, and we were doing a century ride, and someone was struggling, and she was getting crabby, and her nickname ended up being Cupcake because her brother-in-law told her to suck it up, Cupcake. So we were cupcaking her the whole way, and she started calling me Pinky. So I needed a pink mascot, so I got Little Pink Bear. That's the only reason I have a Little Pink Bear.
Okay.
Plus, it's got a sweet little face.
Yeah.
It's a good conversation starter.
I bet
It
it
is.
is.
It is
and
that.
brings a smile to people's
That's
faces.
how people find me on rides. I say, look for the bear. Because, you know, we all look alike in our
Yes.
jackets and helmets and glasses. But look for the bear.
Tom, how about you? Anything you've got to bring?
I have to have comfortable shorts, and I have to have wool socks.
Okay.
And wool shirt, and you know, any kind of sweater or whatever that I have available, I'll use if I have to. And so I want to be comfortable over a wide range of temperatures, and so that's really important to me. And a front handlebar bag that's full of food. Yeah.
Susan, anything special for you?
No, I don't really have any particular good luck charm, but I take great comfort, though, in being well prepared for mishaps that might happen. So, you know, I actually carry a spare tire generally because I ride an unusual tire size. So I carry a spare tire, I carry a spare tube, and I know how to use them. I think that's a really important thing for anybody to be able to do on their bike, whether they're traveling 2 miles or 200, is having the tools that you need to be able to take care of yourself on the road and knowing how to use them. I think particularly for women, having the confidence in your sense of self-sufficiency is really important. I've never been afraid out on the road, whether I've been with a group or by myself, and part of that is because I feel confident in my ability to take care of myself. I know how to fix a flat and do basic things on my bike. So, you know, I don't have any particular good luck token, but I just take comfort in having kind of the necessities.
Yeah. And I gather from your blog that you think about it a lot and you plan.
I do.
I mean,
am
at
a
this
planner.
point, it's somewhat natural, but you're sure to. I mean, if you're just going out on a little club ride, oh, you forgot your water bottle. Oh well.
Right.
But on these, uh-oh.
Well, we do often ride through some remote areas, and we often find ourselves riding in remote areas at night. So really thinking about the sorts of things that you might need on that ride. I'd rather have a little bit too much than too little. So I carry a third water bottle. I don't often need it, but I like to have it. We've all got extra snacks in our in our bags stashed away. I actually carry a very small Mylar space blanket
I do
on any
too.
rides where
Oh.
I'm going to be out at night,
Uh-huh.
because you just don't know. You know, you could break down, or the weather could suddenly change, and so it costs me an ounce to carry it, but I take great comfort in knowing that I have it if I ever need it.
I've used mine
I've used mine once, yeah.
twice.
I can see where that might be the case in
Yeah.
Oregon. Well, let's talk about you, the rider, then, for a minute. What characteristics have you tried to develop in yourself physically so that you can participate in this sport? What have you done, Tom?
I've always had a lot of endurance, and some people say, hey, describe it as great muscular endurance. You know, it's like, okay, I can ride a long ways, but what I've developed is focus and concentration. Be able to endure and carry on in the midst of sometimes adversity. Sometimes things don't go right, and you have a bad day, and you end up taking all the time that's allowed. And so I've worked on just being consistent and moving forward, and even walking if I have to. You know, if the mountains are too high or whatever, what have you, just, you know, your bike breaks, you just walk for a while until you can get it fixed. And so that's been the most important thing for me.
So some of it's mental,
Yeah.
not just training your body from the neck down. It's
Right.
It's
mental.
It's a lot mental.
a lot mental.
It's very, very much mental.
Lynne, how about you? What have you worked to develop? The mental thing too, or?
I don't know. Like I said, I just started riding centuries and then riding longer rides, and my cousin was going, "Well, you're working. When do you find time to train?" And I said, "Huh? I don't train. I just ride." And it's mental. You just keep moving. You know, it's the middle of the night. You just keep moving. You have to walk. You just keep moving. You'll get there. Just keep moving.
But doesn't your inner voice tell you, oh, you should be able to ride up this hill or whatever? And how do you talk back to that inner voice and make it be quiet?
Well, let's see. There, I did the Tahuya 600, my first 600 last year, and the last 100 kilometers had some pretty spectacular climbs in it. And I think I came to one, and I just looked at it, and I looked at me, and I said, "We can walk this hill. We have no pride." I think I walked 3 of the stretches, you know, and I finished in plenty of time. Even a very famous person in the sport, he ended up walking one of them, you know, so I don't feel bad. You just keep moving.
Just a kind of a different outlook then. It's not a race.
It's not a race. It's not a race. Just keep moving.
Susan, you talked about, you know, a little bit about your physicality. What do you identify as something you worked on to be a randonneur?
I mean, the physical part of it, I mean, you do need to be in good, reasonably good physical shape, which you develop over time. You do need to have a strong belief in yourself that you can do it. Sometimes when you're tired and it's been a while and you still have a ways to go, negative thoughts, you know, it's easy to think negatively. Most times that means that you need to eat something.
Right, right.
A little bit of food usually perks up your outlook. I think something that some of us struggle with on really long rides is actually managing food intake. It actually does require quite a lot of calories to do rides like this. And so what might be palatable to you at mile 50 is not necessarily palatable at mile 200. So learning how to manage your energy, what your stomach will tolerate and what it won't. Particularly for the very long brevets, I think you have to train your stomach as much as you do your legs. I spent a lot of time working on that in 2011. I had a goal in 2011 of riding Paris-Brest-Paris, which is kind of the Olympics of randonneuring. It only happens every 4 years, and it's a 1,200 kilometer brevet in France. You have to qualify for it by doing a series of rides successfully. And one of the biggest challenges for me was training my stomach. I was pretty sure I had the legs, but making sure I had the stomach was important, and lots of experimentation.
I can imagine. And does sometimes what works in your training just doesn't hit it in the event?
Yeah, I think we've all had rides where
Oh, yeah.
where you know, you might be okay at 200 kilometers on one ride, and at 200 kilometers on another ride, you're just not a happy camper, either because the weather's poor or you made a bad food choice.
Yeah, I've had those. I was having a problem. I'd make it to 300 kilometers, and then it'd be a little chancy, and there'd be a long pause while I recovered some energy somewhere when I didn't want to eat a thing.
Yeah.
And but Susan has been urging me to go to calories in a bottle for about a year, very firmly. I finally caved and went to calories in a bottle and did my 600 this year with no bonks, not a one, which is pretty exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So is that kind of thing designed kind of to be kind of, well, easier on your stomach than, you know, trying to digest a hamburger or a real meal just isn't going to work while you try to ride your bike. So I know some people drink, those canned things. And
It can be a challenge to digest solid food when you're
Uh-huh.
tired. I mean, your body has energy to only do so many things.
Yeah.
You know, when you're tired, your body can keep you warm. You know, you can use your energy to keep yourself warm, to keep yourself awake, to digest your food. And when you're low on energy, sometimes some of those things have to give. Maybe you only have enough energy to do 2 of those things. So if you're staying awake and you're staying warm, maybe your body doesn't want to digest your food.
yeah.
So it's easier to digest liquid than a hamburger at 2 o'clock in the morning.
Especially when it's cold and you're wearing gloves, you know, it's kind of hard fishing food out. Easier just to drink it.
Yeah. Yeah. You're just not going to be eating delicacies. Tom, did you have any insight into the food aspect?
Food is interesting, especially after the first day. If you're on a long ride, usually you try to eat just before you go to sleep and have a big meal and get as many of your calories in while you're sleeping and digest it all. And so when you wake up, maybe your liver is a little bit fuller of glycogen and your brain has got some more sugar in it and you wake up feeling pretty good. But while you're riding, I like to have things that are really easy to digest. And I like ice cream.
Ice cream's good.
Yeah. Ice cream on a ride or a banana or fruit, something that has some bulk to it always helps me out a little bit.
Yeah.
And then, drinking calories, through the various commercial products if you have to, or apple juice or whatever it is. But, as the days go by, you get into a third day and, you're really tired and you really don't want to digest. And so you have to be very careful what you put in.
And so it's these liquid things too with the protein. Would that be true?
There's no protein
There's
in what
no
I'm drinking.
protein?
Oh,
Mine doesn't have any protein. I get my protein other ways, just because I've had the bad experience of taking in too much protein all at once and then spending a long time going, I really don't want to be here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So there's no protein in mine, but I get protein through like payday bars or, other stuff.
So you all, I always say, we're all kind of built the same, but yet we're all a little different. So
Oh, yeah.
what works for you doesn't work for you kind of thing. So you all have to kind of try things and tweak it, see what works. And what works for you this summer doesn't work so well next summer maybe.
This is true. I don't
Yeah,
eat
I would
Fritos on rides anymore. It's been a while. Used to love Fritos.
Salty.
Yeah. So now I'm into Pringles. They're just easier. It's weird, I know.
I'm sure we could spend the whole show talking about food because it's really kind of a critical issue to keep your
Kind
little
of
engine
essential
going.
to our lives.
Yeah.
Very, very
Yeah.
important.
And like you say, before, during, and after, what you do is critical to the whole thing. But we're going to wrap that topic up, and we're going to take a little break now and watch a video about Northwest Bicycle Safety Council's Beaverton Banks and Beyond ride that's coming up August 25th. We want this video to entice you to go to our website and sign up to do the ride. And it's not a long-distance Randonneur ride. It's 100 miles at the most. So let's watch this video, and I hope that you go sign up to do the ride with us. Well, there you go. There's a lot of the scenery that you'll see on the Beaverton Banks and Vernonia bicycle tour. Beaverton Banks and Beyond bicycle tour. It's all B's. I should be able to remember that. Put on by Northwest Bicycle Safety Council, and that's August 25th. So go to our website, Northwest Bicycle Safety Council, and register. It's time to sign up to do that ride, and we'll see you there. We're getting ready to have a big meeting and get that ride organized for you. But right now we're talking to Lynne Fitzsimmons and Susan Otcenas and Tom Durkin about Randonneuring. And we've talked a little bit about it. We're going to cover some more information. During the break, we kind of thought about other safety issues, and that would be lighting, because some of these rides go on for a long time. They're many kilometers, and you're out in the dark. So let's talk about lighting and safety, visibility, gear that you want to have with reflectivity. Susan, you taught me the last time you were on the show. Tom, how about you? Lights.
Lights. Well, I was working in St. Helens and came home one night about 6 o'clock and hit a rock. And the inadequate lighting I had just didn't light up the road enough for me to see it, and I had a flat, and there I was. And so I vowed to get a good set of lights, and so I wrote it off as part of my commuting expense for my teaching job, and justified it to my wife, and I spent quite a bit of money on my lighting system, and I've been very, very happy with it. And now I can see what's on the road 200 or 300 yards in front of me, and I know that my taillight is very bright and steady, and cars can see me. And when I stop, there's a stand light function that keeps the headlight on and the taillight on, so if I'm at a stoplight or whatever, someone can see me. So I feel that a bright lighting system is really critical for riding at night, and I continue to use that system when I commute back and forth to work if it's dark out.
Susan, how about you?
I think all of us have spouses and partners and children and parents that want to see us all come home safely. So I think none of us have scrimped on a good set of lights. I'm always concerned when I see riders out on the road, not randonneurs, but just in general when I see people riding with insufficient headlights or taillights. A good lighting setup is one of the most important things that you can do to make yourself more visible. So that's really critical. I'm a firm believer in a lot of reflectivity. The Randonneuring group requires us to wear ankle straps. Reflective ankle straps are very, very effective, not just for randonneurs, but for any cyclist, because your feet are moving up and down, and so that reflectivity, that motion is very, it attracts attention, it attracts the driver's attention. We wear reflective sashes or vests, and I personally put reflectivity on my helmet. I like to have reflectivity on me that makes out the shape of a human figure. So the roundness of my head, the shape of the reflectivity on my back, my legs moving up and down. It's very obvious from far away that I'm a human being, as opposed to just having a little bright red light or something.
That makes sense.
So I ride with a mirror on my eyeglasses. I know Lynne does as well. I don't know if you do, Tom.
No, I listen.
Yeah.
I really develop my hearing to know what's going on behind me.
I listen too. I couldn't get out of my neighborhood if I couldn't hear.
Yeah.
Because of the blind curve.
I like to see what's going on behind me. Not everyone likes to ride with a mirror. For me, I liken it to, I don't really drive my car without a rear view mirror, and having a rear view mirror on my eyeglasses lets me see what's coming up behind me. Sometimes really small trucks make really big sounds, and they're really not so threatening. And other times there are quite quiet vehicles like Priuses that are not so easy to hear, that I like to be able to see from a ways off. So knowing my place in the road and knowing what's coming up behind me makes me feel safer in my place on the road.
Lynne, what thoughts have you given to lights?
The more the better. Mostly we look like Tron. I'm serious. We look like Tron people. I've taken pictures of us at night, and it's just all bright lights. I've got a little front light on my helmet and a rear blinky on the back of the helmet. This is really nice because I can use it to read the cue sheet, and maybe if I have to fix a flat, the light is looking where I am. That's a really good thing to have a light on your helmet. I have a very bright front light. I started out using a battery light, the one I was commuting with, and like everyone else went to the generator hub and the brightest light at the time, and that bike is now my commuter. It's the nicest commuter bike ever, I've got to tell you. but my current Randonneuring bike has, again, a generator hub and one of the brightest lights available because I like front light. And I've got 2 rear lights, one flashes. I can set them both to flash, but one flashes and one doesn't. My mud flaps are brilliantly retroreflective red. My of course, the vests that we're all required to wear. And if I'm wearing a jacket at night, it's got reflective stripes all over it. You'd have to have a real problem. If you can't see me, you shouldn't be driving.
It sounds like it.
Yeah.
Now, my boss was at the bike store today, and he said that he saw helmets that have places now to hook the lights,
Yeah.
which he hadn't seen before, I hadn't heard of before. You had to like zip tie them or duct tape them or something like that. So you guys all knew about that.
Well, my helmet's probably older than Bruce would like it to be, but it has a little place in the back to put a light, and the light in front has a Velcro strap. But the newer ones of this particular model actually have you can buy a specific purpose-built light for it. But I like my little light; it's pretty bright, and it flashes if I need it to. It can be red. It's kind of fun.
Well, that sounds like good advice that all of us can share because, like you've mentioned, in Oregon, there's often gray days or you're scooting like into the dusk or whatever. So lighting is important around here. Let's talk about the brevet itself. Brevet, isn't that just an event of any distance in Randonneuring? Is that in any ride? Is that an accurate description?
No, the brevets are like, they have to be at least 200 kilometers long.
Oh, okay.
So their standard distance is 200, 300, 400, 600, 1,000, 1,200. There's one in the UK, London, Edinburgh, London, that's what, 1,400? But, yeah, so brevets are generally those fixed distances.
Okay, okay. And have you all done brevets? You have, all the longer distances.
Oh, yeah.
So let's talk about when you two have blogs, and you have, so that kind of, I don't know, Tom, do you have a blog?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I have a blog, and it has no pictures on it.
Oh.
Just boring writing.
But those are
riding my
really
bike.
great examples. I mean, to me, those really help you understand what this is all about. They really give good descriptions about your events. So that's one way. But let's talk about it in that fashion so that we understand what these rides are about. Tell us about some of the rides that you've done. Tom, why don't you start? Tell us about some of the rides you've done and how you go through it.
Well, I was training for this ride in Eastern Oregon that would go from the Dalles to La Grande and back via all the greatest small roads you could possibly think of. And in order to do that, I had to train pretty regularly. And my favorite ride was from Hillsboro, right here in Hillsboro, to Dallas and back. And I could do this ride. It was 200 kilometers, and I'd register with the organizer, and I could just do it on my own and do it in 9 or 10 hours or 11 hours or whatever, and just do it regularly. And so I ended up doing that ride about 5 or 6 times during the course of that spring while I was training for the 1,000-kilometer ride. And to me, it was just the regularity of going through that route and dealing with all the other trials and tribulations that you have on the road, punctures and tired and getting lost a little bit here and there. And even if you know where you are, you get lost sometimes. And so that led up to my 1,000-kilometer ride. And the Blue Mountains are absolutely beautiful at sunrise and sunset and in the middle of the night with the windmills all blinking red in unison. And it's just a wonderful place to be. Yeah.
That sounds like a great experience. Susan?
Are you wanting to know what my favorite ride is, or?
Well, whatever you want to talk about as far as a good experience Randonneuring.
There's really nothing like seeing the sunrise from the seat of your bicycle after you've been after you've been riding all night. I did do Paris vs. Paris last year and had a really amazing experience on that ride. Lots of really high points, but a couple of low points too over the course of any long ride. Sometimes you got to pick yourself back up, and after what was probably the lowest point for me on the very last night, I really struggled quite a bit on the very last night. I was quite tired and I was having some stomach trouble. But I got back out there, and when the sun came up that morning, I cried. But it wasn't a bad cry. It was tears of incredible joy, because I knew that I had accomplished what I set out to do. It was my last sunrise, you know. I had seen 3 other sunrises on that trip, and this was my last one, and I could smell the barn. I knew that when that sun came up, I knew I was going to finish the ride, and I can't describe what an incredible feeling that is, to train for something, to work for something for so long, and to know that it's within your grasp. It's just, I'll never forget how incredible I felt when that sun came up. It was amazing.
So does that empowerment transfer to other elements of your life?
Yeah, you know, I think when you take on a really big event and accomplish it, you realize you can apply that to other things that you might want to take on. I think we're all capable of a lot more than we think we are. Lynne took on her first 600 this past year, and those of us who know her well know that she had what it took to be able to do it. She had the physical strength. She has the ability. We needed to convince her that she had
they did.
Yes, we needed to
So
convince her
many
that she
kicks in the
had
butt.
the mindset to do it, because we knew that she could do it.
That's
and,
right. Yeah.
we all sat back and watched her accomplish it, and it was a pretty wonderful thing. And you know, now she's accomplished yet another one, and is looking to take on a new challenge this summer by doing her first 1,000. And those of us who know her well know that she's.
Oh man, that's scary. I'm just figuring out where I'm going to be in the middle of the night. It's like, I don't think I'm going to see Idaho in daylight.
Well, we know she can accomplish it, and I know she can carry that strength from the 600s on into a longer distance.
So Lynne, tell us about maybe that's what you want to tell us about.
I don't know. I kind of set myself to go for 1,000 kilometers this year, and that's next month. And yeah, we won't talk about that right now. But it's kind of scary. But what was my favorite one? Gosh, the Three Capes it's a 300K route that we do. Starts in Forest Grove, goes out Highway 6 to Tillamook, and down the Three Capes Drive. And you have to climb the Three Capes. And then you
Don't notice that in a car. Really?
Did you know, what's that first Cape? Cape Meares. You have to climb it 4 times.
Cape Meares.
Oh, and the road is terrible. Views are nice, though.
The views are incredible.
Yeah.
The views are the payoff.
Well, that, you know, and going down from the summit on Highway 6 all the way to Tillamook, you go like forever and you don't have to pedal. And it's so beautiful. You see the Coast Range, and you don't realize how much is shut out by the car windshield. It's just beautiful. And the Three Capes, of course, they're great. And then you come back over the Little Nestucca, which is like the prettiest road in this state ever. And then you're at Grand Ronde, and you work your way back through, I guess, what we would call the standard return routes. I have ridden back from Amity so many times. In my sleep, yes. But it's just a really pretty ride. And 300K, I don't know, for me it was pretty exciting because I actually finished before midnight. And I was like, this is great. Because the first 300Ks I did not finish before midnight. I finished in plenty of time, but that's kind of like a nice goal to finish before midnight. And the sunrises, I'm with Susan on the sunrises. On the 400s, there was one I saw 2 sunrises because we started before the sun rose, and I ended up finishing after the second sunrise. And that was the best sunrise ever. I needed that sunrise in the worst way, and there it was. The sun comes up, and for me, I have energy again.
Yeah, interesting.
It's you know, you're riding through the night. It's a challenge.
So what's your favorite part? I mean, I think you've kind of touched on this, but what is your favorite part of randonneuring? What keeps drawing you back? What is the addiction element of it?
Well, it's riding through this beautiful countryside of Oregon, Washington, Colorado, wherever you happen to be. It's just beautiful to be out there and seeing it all without the windshield in the way. And you have the bugs in your teeth, and you have the wind in your hair, and you can hear everything that's going on, and it's hot and it's cold and it's wet and it's dry, and just all those things. And I really enjoy being out of doors. And since this is my activity, I follow it as much as I can.
Susan?
Yeah, I mean, I really agree with that 100%. What you experience on your bike, you know, we pass through so many sceneries in a car, but you don't get 5 or 10% of the experience in a car. You pass by too quickly, you don't smell the smells, you don't hear the wind in the trees. You don't hear the rush of the river when you're in the car. And you just pass through it too quickly. Bicycling is just an amazing way to experience it. And I've lived a lot of places in my life. I've lived in a lot of different states. I've lived overseas. We are so incredibly lucky here in the Northwest. Oregon, Washington, two of the most beautiful places you'd ever want to ride, not just in the United States, but in the world. Just stunning. And doing it from a bicycle is, we're very lucky. We're very lucky.
Lynn?
Yeah.
Feel the
And
same?
you miss all the waterfalls in a car because you go by them too fast. The little waterfalls. You're not going to
Yes,
miss Multnomah
like-
Falls, obviously. But yeah, it's just being there and experiencing it. The fact that if you want to have ice cream 3 times in a day, you can. That's not a small. They make the best ice cream sandwiches at Multnomah Falls, just saying.
Oh, they do?
Oh, yeah. See,
Good
you
to
didn't know. You
I
didn't
did not know.
Yeah,
Bicycle there and have them.
yeah, you know these things.
And they make huckleberry tarts as well.
Ah,
And that's worth a ride out to Multnomah Falls.
yeah.
And Susan and I did a ride along the Clackamas River last week, and you can hear the river, and you can see the rafters and the kayakers,
Hear them.
and the sun, and you can hear them with their shouts of joy, and you see the sun twinkling on the water, and the wildlife, and it all comes together when you're climbing at 4 miles an hour, and just out in the countryside. It's really great.
And on the bicycle, we often go places where cars can't. Like on that ride that they just did, I was one of the pre-riders. We can go on the PGE Road, Faraday Road, which is just beautiful. And of course, there's the Banks for Nonia Trail. A lot of our rides incorporate that, which is another just fairy tale place to ride. Some of our rides incorporate bits of gravel, just to get you where not too much, but there's some. It's just you can just go so many places on the bike that you wouldn't even think of in the car.
Okay. Now, let's talk about the man-to-woman ratio, which I was unaware of before the show, and you guys started talking about it, because like I said, we have a majority of women, but yet, what are the facts? Susan, you seem to know.
It tends to be a sport that attracts more men than women. I think nationally, Lynn said nationally our membership is about 18% female. You'll find more women come out on the shorter rides, shorter being 200 and 300. There's a lot fewer women on the 400s, 600s, 1000s. I think maybe the distance is daunting. I think some women probably are not as comfortable for their own personal safety. Maybe they're not so comfortable being out alone at night. Although many Randonneurs, double or triple up at night and ride together. You don't have to ride alone on these rides, and many people ride in groups. Some of my longest rides I've done with other people. But especially at the longest distances, and Lynn and I have done rides where we've been the only females in a group of 40 or 50.
Wow.
My 600, there were 3 women that finished.
Out
And,
of 60 probably, right?
well, there were 60 starters and 5 women, maybe. And I did ride alone at night. About 40 miles on 101 all the way into Forks.
And how did you feel about that? Were you concerned, or what were you thinking about?
Not thinking is a really good strategy. just because, I was there by myself. I was singing songs, trying to keep myself awake, or you just keep pedaling. I actually discovered I wasn't thinking about very much at all.
But you weren't nervous or paranoid, or
There wasn't anything
the
there to
boogeyman
be
was gonna
nervous
get
or
you?
paranoid
Okay.
about. It's the west side of the Olympic Peninsula in the middle of the night. There was no traffic. Cars can't sneak up on you at night. I just kept pedaling.
And Susan, what are your sentiments about that? About encouraging women to take this on?
I actually think that in many ways women can be better endurance athletes than men. I do have a smaller engine, and so I never feel the urge to have to go out at a jackrabbit pace early on. Women tend to be pretty good at pacing themselves. And I think that's a real asset later on in a ride. We don't blow ourselves up early on trying to keep up with the rest of the guys. Nobody expects me to keep up. And there's a lot of freedom in that, actually, because I can let them go and just keep chugging along at my steady pace. And I've done many a ride where I let the boys go at 20 or 30 miles, and I see a lot of them again at 150 miles. I'm still just kind of chugging along. I would love to see more women come out for the sport. There's certainly welcoming women in the club that would take them under, take women under our wings and introduce them to the sport. Our club does have some shorter rides that are all comers that you don't have to be members for. We run events called Populaires. We run those a couple of times a year. You don't need to be a member. Most of them are free, or maybe a minimal $5 fee for snacks, and it's a great way to introduce people to the sport. And
as a matter of fact, you don't have to be an Orlando member to ride a lot of the brevets, because we have people that show up and ride. They just plunk down their fee and they ride.
So those beginning rides would be about 62 miles approximately.
Right.
So if you've been doing any road riding at all, you could probably do it and just get a sense of it. And I'm obviously talking to you three, I realized that you'd be very encouraging and, like you say, take people under your wing and mentor people that are interested in the sport. Where would they go to find out more about it or to find out about these rides?
Google Oregon Randonneurs. It's www.orrando.org. We have a website. There's a schedule.
And go from there.
Yeah, and there's actually a poster on one of the shops downtown with our schedule.
Okay.
I know there's a poster that exists.
And you go all year.
We had a New Year's Day 200 last year.
That was great.
And it was one of the best rides of the year.
It was so cold.
It was cold and
But it was
clear.
dry. And Marcello was there with cup of noodles, to keep us going at one point.
Yeah.
Hot food. Now you need hot food.
Oh,
not
yeah.
the ice
When it's
cream
cold.
from...
Well, it depends on the year,
Yeah.
I actually have a thermal jug, so when it's cold, I carry hot tea, and drink it.
We organized theme rides, too. He organized a brew pub populaire, which was a 62-mile ride where we had a lot of new folks on. We've done New Year's Day rides. Some of our populaires are wine country populaires, where we ride through wine country.
And we do the Verboort ride. And
Yeah, with
stop
Jen's
at
at
the
the
Sausage
the
Fest.
Sausage
The
Fest.
Sausage Festival.
Oh, that's very important.
Well, it's obvious you guys are having a whole lot of fun, even though it sounds challenging. So thank you all for joining us and talking to us about this sport. And you all do have blogs. And, I think you could just kind of Google your name and a blog, and we could find your blogs. And that's really informative. So thanks for doing that. Thank you for joining us.